are discussing company structure overview. And the company structure overview is one of our newest topics that have been added to Employee Central, so our THR81 materials. This is something that has been in demand for quite a long time. If you've worked with customers, they've been asking for this for years. So this is a really, really big step in the right direction for Employee Central. So you may be wondering, what is company structure overview? Company structure overview acts very similarly to the regular people org chart, and then we have the position org chart as well. We have a third one that provides the structure of the foundation object records that we have built and associated in the system. So you should have learned through your studies about foundation objects. Foundation objects are the building blocks of Employee Central. We have to have all of our foundation objects and their related records built before we can hire anyone into the system. So when we talk about foundation objects, what we're talking about is our legal entities and our locations and our divisions and our business units and our departments, our cost centers, all of these pieces that build the company structure, so to speak. Once we have those built, we then want to create associations between these objects. And this association is going to create a hierarchy. So here we have an example of departments falling under certain cost centers. We have an association that's been built between cost center and department, and then we've associated individual records with each other. So here we're seeing that relationship physically manifest on the screen. Again, this is something that has been requested for quite a long time. So it's very exciting that we are finally able to deliver this to our customers. It's this structure is very nice from a just a representative point of view. You're able to actually see the structure physically manifest on the screen. But not only that, you can also make changes directly on the screen as well to the company structure. There is a limitation right now with this new feature. At this point, we can only show relationships between metadata framework foundation objects. So those objects that have been converted over to MDF, they are shown on the corporate structure overview. Unfortunately, foundation objects that are still maintained through XML, so they're still configured in the corporate data model and the country-specific corporate data model, those cannot be part of this company structure. So for example, locations are still managed through XML. So we cannot see a physical representation of what locations fall under what legal entities on this overview. We can only see MDF foundation objects. So the first thing you're going to do with your customer is you're going to set up the structure for these foundation objects, the types of fields that we want to display in them, and the labels we use, and which fields are required. Once you build the foundation objects themselves, then you're going to build the records for them. So for locations, you're going to build the Philadelphia office, and the New York office, and the Tokyo office, and the London office. For legal entities, you're going to have ACE USA, ACE Australia, ACE China. For business units, you may have sales, marketing. However, it needs to be configured. So you build your objects first, you build the structure, then you build your individual records. Once you have that information, you build your associations between these objects and you associate the records themselves. This can actually be done concurrently with building the records. So you want to build your associations between objects first, and then when you build your records, you can maintain those associations in there. Once you have all this built, you can then add the company structure overview into the system. So today we're going to talk through how to set this up in your instance. And hi, Kat, thank you so much for joining. I see you're in chat there. For those of you that may have missed my explanation in the beginning, unfortunately, this is only a one-way audio, but if you have any questions relevant to what we're discussing at that point, please feel free to share your questions in chat, and I will do my best to answer them. So in order to have company structure overview, you must first turn it on or enable it in the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a tool called Manage Employee Central Settings. If you're not seeing this come up for your tools, that means that you haven't enabled this in role-based permissions. So you would need to turn this on in role-based permissions in order to be able to see this option. This is sort of a new tool that came about in the last couple of years to make it easier for customers to be able to turn things on or enable things without having to go through provisioning. Can everyone give me a green check mark if they can hear my audio coming through? Excellent, thank you. If somebody could help out Pat while I'm giving the lesson, that would be really appreciative, thank you. So this Manage Employee Central Settings tool is where you can turn on certain additional features within Employee Central. So if we go down here, we can see that the company structure overview has already been turned on for us. If it's not turned on, then all we need to do is scroll down, switch the button over to on, and then save our work. Since this was already turned on for us, we already have this saved. So that's the first step that we need to do. Something that's really nice about this tool is if we hover over the question mark, it tells you a little bit about the feature, and it actually can take you directly to an installation guide. So this is really, really helpful if you don't have my recording handy, or you may not have the Academy content handy. At least you can go directly to the installation guide, and it should tell you exactly how to turn this on. Now, once you have this turned on, you need to give the appropriate role-based permission access to the objects that are going to be used to manage and build this company structure. It does require a little bit of double work. And I say that it's double work in the way of you've already built the actual associations on the foundation objects themselves, and you've associated the records. So you already have your corporate structure defined in the system. However, you need to build this structure again, or at least the skeleton of the structure, on the company structure overview objects in order to be able to see that on that org chart. So if we were to go right now to company info, we're not going to see the company structure overview section because we haven't permissioned it yet. So the first thing we're going to do is go into role-based permissions, and we can go to one of our existing permission roles. And we can go, for example, to the system admin permission role and assign the appropriate permissions. Now, there's a couple of places where we're going to want to assign permissions. So if we go into the permission section and scroll all the way down, we see there is a particular section for company structure overview. So we need to assign the appropriate permissions so that people can even see that section to be able to access it. So here we have a couple of options: access company structure overview, being able to display change the display date so we can see things in the past, present, or future, taking a look at the employment count, the position count, and accessing the company structure overview configuration. So for some people, you may just grant the first option here. You may not want to give them the additional features. Since we are the administrators working on this, we are going to grant all of the access because we want to see all of the available tools within this feature. So I'm going to check all the boxes here under company structure overview. And then we need to make sure that we give the appropriate role-based permissions to the objects to build this company structure in the first place. So the objects that are going to build these company structures are maintained through metadata framework. So they're available directly in the instance. We're going to find these objects under miscellaneous permissions. So if we go to miscellaneous permissions here, we set the security on the object and we set the ability to manage role-based permissions directly in miscellaneous permissions. So we can go in here and for each of the company structure objects, we can assign the appropriate permissions. And we do that by checking all of the boxes except for the field level overrides box. So we're going to go in here and just check all of the boxes to be able to completely manage these metadata framework objects related to company structure, except for field level overrides. So there's just a few objects here that we will grant access to. And that's going to allow us to go in to manage data and be able to build our structure then, so then it will be visually represented on our company structure overview page or tab. So once we have all the appropriate permissions, we're going to click done and we're going to save our changes. Now let me give you a hint that's not in the course content. In the course content, we've already set up your demo system so that you automatically see those objects in the miscellaneous permissions. If you are not seeing those objects there, that's because in your particular instance, whether it's a customer instance or whatever you're using, you've not set security on those objects. So in order to be able to even see them come up in miscellaneous permissions, you need to go into the object definitions themselves. And we're going to do that in the Configure Object Definitions tool. We're going to look up the company structure objects. So we'll just go to company structure definition first. And if we look at the object definition, if we scroll down to security, we'll see that the security is set to yes, and the permission category is miscellaneous permissions. So if you see security set as no, that means you can't set individualized role-based permission security, and you're not going to be able to see those objects to be able to add them. So if you ever run into that issue where you're not seeing these objects in miscellaneous permissions or really anywhere in role-based permissions, you just have to go in and set the security. So Kat, to answer your question, the consequence if you select field override, there's not really a consequence. It's just not meant for what we're trying to do here. So field level overrides, what that would do is override the natural settings that we've set on these fields. So it's just like in the XML, when we set a field as visibility to both, making that field automatically visible and editable. But then we go into role-based permissions and we may make that field read-only for some groups of people, or we may make it not visible at all for other groups. Just like we can do that there, we can do that using field level overrides in the role-based permissions as well. So there's no consequence, it's just that we don't need to get into that detail for what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to get access to the objects so that we can build records for them. You're welcome. And again, guys, at any time, if there's a question that comes up, please place it in the chat. So what I'm going to do just for good measure is I'm going to log out of the system. I always like to log out of the system and log back in whenever I make any changes to role-based permissions. It sort of resets in and it just makes sure that I am going to be able to see what I'm supposed to be seeing. So I'm going to log back in here. And I'm going to go out to the Manage Data tool. So the Manage Data tool is where we can build records for any metadata framework object in our system. So that includes our new company structure objects. So if we go over to Create New here and we type in company structure, we see We have objects here for company structure definition and company structure UI configuration. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to build out the association that we've already configured in the system on the company structure. For today's example, we're going to show the associations that have already been built between business unit and division, and also division and department. So if we were to look at a division record right now, so I'm just pulling up an example of a division, we can see that at the bottom of the division here, we have business unit listed, and then we have one of our business units, corporate industries. What this is saying is that the division industry is associated to the business unit corporate industry. So it falls under corporate industries. So if it falls under corporate industries here, that means there's an association between business unit and division. If we look at department here, we'll also be able to see that there's an association between department and division. So the finance department falls under the industries division. So we've already built this hierarchy. All we have to do is go into the company structure and just recreate it here. Identify the associations that have been built so that we can see them in our company structure. So I'm going to create a new company structure definition. I have to give it an ID and a name. So I'm just going to give it an ID of structure and a name of company structure. This allows you to actually have multiple company structures. So if you wanted to see certain associations and certain views, you would have the ability to do that by creating more than one company structure. And then we're going to place the associations that we built down here at the bottom. So we have an association between business unit and division. Now it's very important when you're putting in the objects here, you have to put in the object codes or IDs. So notice here that business unit does not have any spaces and it has a capital B, capital U. This is exactly how the code for business unit is reflected in the system. So we have to have it this way. And then division, the code here is capital D, lowercase, the rest of it with no spaces as well. Then in the relationship name, what we're putting in here is the ID of the association. So I'm actually going to go out really quickly to the division object definition so you can physically see the association that we built here. And if you have any questions about associations, there's a really, really good document available in the learning room. It's titled EC Associations Examples or something like that. And it shows you step-by-step process for creating these associations. So that's your first step. If you're a little bit confused by what I'm talking about now, your first step is to go review that document that talks about associations, and that'll put you in a good place to build the company structure. So if we look at the association section here, we see that there's an association to business unit. So the division is associated to business unit, and we want to take note of this name here. So I'm going to copy the name over here. And we also want to take note of the type. Now, all foundation objects associations are valid when associations. So we want to go in here, and under relationship name, this is where we're going to paste our name, wrong tab, our name of our association. And again, this is very case and space sensitive, so we really want to be careful when we're copying it over. So we have the source object, the target object, the association ID or name. And then for relationship type, we're simply going to grab the type that we see here. So we're going to change this to a valid when association. And then we're going to do the same exact thing with our department and division association as well. So I can actually open up my department object definition and see all the information in here. So the only one I'm concerned about right now is the relationship between division and department. So we're going to put in the ID of the division object, the ID or code of the department object, the relationship name, which I can copy over from here, and the type of association, and we already know that that is a valid when association. Now, if your customer has more foundation object associations than that, feel free to put in all of your associations. But remember, you can only list the associations here between metadata framework or MDF foundation objects. So for example, even though we have an association in our system between legal entity and location, because location is an XML object, we don't have the ability to physically see that association on the company structure. So right now we're only going to focus on these two associations here, and we're going to go ahead and save this company structure definition. So this is just highlighted the associations that we have already in our system. The next thing that we're going to build is our company structure UI configuration. And what that is that really is telling the system how we want this chart to look. So I'm going to go in here to company structure UI configuration. I have to choose a company structure definition. I'm going to choose the one that I just built. So this is the one that I just built in my system. Then we have a threshold for compact view. If we hover over the question mark here, it says you can specify the threshold above which the child entities will be shown in compact view. So if you're looking at the company structure in a compact way, it's only going to show the first 12 records. It's not going to show anything beyond that. So if you have 40 departments that fall under one division, it sounds a little complicated, but let's say you did, it would only show the first 12. And then it asks whether or not you want to show photos for user fields, and we'll get to the user fields in just a minute. So then down below here, we have our object configuration itself. So we're going to start with business units. So we have 3 foundation objects we're representing on this chart. We have business unit, division, and department, and all of the relationships between those records. So here we can set a card color for business units. So it's really nice because you can actually color code each of your objects so that all business units are blue, all divisions are red, and all departments are green. The accept, unfortunately, I would love to just write blue in here, but they don't really accept that as a card color option. The only thing that they accept is an HTML hex value. So I'm not a hex expert. HTML hex value blue. So it's telling me that this is the color for blue. I'm just going to grab that. Hopefully it'll work for us. If not, I have some backups. Then it's going to ask if this is referencing a field in the job information section. What field is this referencing? So we can tie this to our job info information. We've done this in many different places. We know that our foundation objects are represented in our employee files. all we're looking for here is the ID of the field related to business unit within the job information section. So what we could do is we could open up the succession data model and look for that field. I happen to have the ID of that field handy, so let's skip that step for now. And then we also need the ID of the field in the position object as well, if we have position management turned on. Now, in both scenarios here, this information is case and space sensitive, so we want to make sure that we copy it exactly how it is found in both places. Then we can go into the details section. And the details section, we can actually configure what fields from the business unit object we want to display on the company structure. So we can take any of the information that we manage in the business unit foundation object and place it here on this card. So this is really nice. So I'm just going to pick some simple fields. And again, we need the IDs or codes or names of these fields here. So I'm going to put in the name, which is the nice name of the business unit, the external code, which is the ID of the business unit, and when the business unit got started, the effective start date of this business unit record. If I wanted other fields, all I would have to do is go into the business unit object and find the ID of the field that I want here. So if I wanted head of unit to display on here, all I would have to do is copy this field. And I can place that right here.